we'll get fired up here. We've already used party of time, but we were listening to the kids, which is probably.
Oh, we're very supportive of that work.
Yes. So, yeah, we're live, and so we'll call the meeting back to order, and we have a group of people from the cannabis growing industry, and going to hear some updates and things from them. So Graham, you lead off. Brian, you want to introduce?
Yep. Brian Collmore, representing the Rutland Senatorial.
Brian Campion, Bennington County. Rich Westman, Lemoyle.
And I thought we'd start from Orleans County. So welcome and good morning.
Thank you all for having.
Thank you for waiting.
Oh, you're welcome. No problem. So thank you for the invitation today. My name is Graham Eubanks-Rufinoff. I'm the policy director at Rural Vermont. Being in the ag community, I know you're all very familiar with my organization, so I won't take the time to introduce in particular, but we're also a member of the Vermont Cannabis Equity Coalition. We've been advocating together for a number of years now for a regulated cannabis community and economy, which is racially just, economically equitable, and agriculturally accessible. We're all member-based, not-for-profit organizations representing people who live in Vermont. We hope to be a resource for policymakers in relation to cannabis policy and connecting directly with constituents or stakeholders. We have a list of policy priorities for 2024. They're on the website. Thank you, Linda. Many of which we bring before you today, which are relevant to agriculture, land, and equity. So my plan is to speak briefly right now for you all, and then continue on through our other list of witnesses. But I appreciate the opportunity to return to wrap up our coalition's testimony and provide some statements for rural Vermont that's more in our expertise if when there's time. And I'm also happy to speak during other testimony and respond to questions or with framing to help contextualize on itself.
Yeah.
So some of our priorities are included in two bills introduced last year, H426 and S127, but many are not. H612 is in House Government Operations right now. It's the miscellaneous cannabis bill. I know Chair Pepper and Bryn were in here as well speaking to you about this bill a few weeks ago. And that is a potential vehicle for the inclusion of our recommendations as well, which is why I'm mentioning it. As I wrote in our request for testimony before the committee, given 612 and these other bills already have language directly related to agricultural status, outdoor cannabis production, history of work towards recognizing outdoor cannabis production as agricultural within and without the State House, including your committee. And of course, that's to the extent that we can name aspects of agricultural status as opposed to naming it agricultural and conflicting with federal law. And of course, your committee's domain relates to agriculture. You know, we feel that you're in a unique position to both hear from and understand these concerns and the people who experience them and support the ushering of some of these recommendations and voices into the appropriate committee and legislation if it's not hearing it. So with that being said, I think I would like to move from this overall introduction of our coalition to the substance of our time here and begin with Reverend Mark Hughes, representing the Vermont Racial Justice Alliance. And I'll step aside. We can begin the list if Mark is on.
He's on. He just needs to take his video stop off.
Excellent.
Well, I guess he's ready to roll. My Reverend.
Good morning, and good morning to the entire committee. I don't know that I've been in this committee before. I just want to give a shout out to the folks over at the coalition with NOFA and Rural Vermont, and also Josh from the former CEO of Trace, and Jeffrey, of course. I think Jeffrey's in the room from the Growers Association, and then we've got the nurses folks, and just a pretty good coalition. It was my impression that we just stop in and just give you a general update, just a cannabis update. I saw the former Senator Rogers walk in the room too, so shout out to you. It's good to see you again. Good to hear your voice. But wanted to just take a little time and talk about the support that we have and the solidarity that we stand in with the rest of the organizations. This whole challenge has been uphill. I think Graham just mentioned the fact that we've been at this for a number of years. We were at this before we had a regulated market. In fact, I think it was maybe 2018 or 2019 when we started the work. I think some of the good news is that, you know, with the regulated market rolling out, has been, it seems as though that the vast majority of the market has remained relatively controlled. We were incredibly concerned that there would be a market, that there would be kind of like a kind of a what do you call it, a toss up, kind of like a free for all, and we have just a bunch of big players coming in to Vermont and sucking all of the air out of the room, quite frankly. So I want to just also just, you know, take our hats off collectively as a coalition to Pepper and the board and Brian and others who've just done such a great job and doing the best they can under the circumstances. You know, this thing has been at a very, very neck break pace at which it's been rolled out. And one of the things that we were hopeful and optimistic for is obviously to see equity in the market. And I just want to pause there for a minute and just ask you to reflect on the fact that the numbers are in, and it's 0.2% of farmland in the state that are in the hands of Black folks, 0.2%. So that's a challenge talking about a market like this, because if you don't have land and you don't have money, and we know that the median wealth of a Black family in America is 1/13 that of a white family. Again, the median wealth of a Black family in America is 1/13 that of a white family. And again, this is a market where, frankly, you need land, you need money. And generationally, there have been obstacles for the acquisition of land property. You've probably heard from the Land Access and Opportunity Board. If you haven't, I'm sure you will. The Vermont Racial Justice Alliance holds a seat there, and will continue to, you know, push and advocate for meaningful and constructive ways to provide equity across the agriculture industry, and in fact across the widely disparate distribution of political and economic power in the state writ large. That being said, you know, my testimony will be brief. I did want to just highlight a couple things. I've been watching this because, frankly, this is only about maybe 5% of the time that I have to allocate to it's only 5% of my time, of our time. I'm largely policy for our organization, but I only have about 5% of that my time on hold to really invest in discussions surrounding cannabis. So a lot of times I'll be in and out, but there have been some observations that I've made along the way. And I know this whole conversation about agriculture and this product, there's I can see it being a challenge in a lot of different ways for our small farmers. Again, we stand in solidarity with all of the requests that have been made with across the other. I think there's 7 areas that we may have highlighted. I think there's 6 additional ones, and I just want to just place an emphasis on what is agriculture, what is outside. I don't want to get too deep into that because, frankly, I don't have a lot of institutional knowledge, and I don't want to embarrass myself in testimony and engaging too deeply in that discussion. But I did want to flag it. I know that the inequities as they exist, they do present some interesting challenges, some unfair challenges. Obviously, if you are in a category of folks who don't typically own land, we know that even in housing across this state, the racial disparities that exist in home ownership, they exceed significantly those disparities that exist statewide, United States wide, to the extent that I believe that about 70 to 72% of white folks are owning their homes, and I think the number is probably closer to maybe 25%. And I'd really estimate it to be closer to around 22%, but there's some differences of opinions in data. But even if it were, those are stark differences. The reason why I bring that point out is because when we're talking about growing, again, you got to have land. And if you don't own property, then you're relegated to an apartment or a house that you're renting, and then their house, their rules. And if you are poor and you're relegated to those circumstances, then that takes you out of the industry. Not to say, not even to mention the fact that, of course, there's some economic restrictions there as well. So I did want to flag that, because there's nothing that's enabling folks who are living in rented properties to grow. And I also wanted to just flag the fact that, even, in rural areas, I know there's a bunch of concern, and I've heard a few conniptions surrounding the folks growing inside of cities and towns. And, I'd really love to see that get resolved in a reasonable way, because I think that it also speaks very much to equity. I did want to refer your attention to a report that we produced, and this was, I think it was actually 2 or 3 years ago. It's called Visions, Principles, and Proposals for Vermont Cannabis Control. We can make sure that it gets over to your committee. I think Jeffrey would probably be the one most suitable to do that. And I think it would be, I would challenge you, in your spare time, if you just want to take a look at it and take a look at the delta as far as where the progress that has been made. Because one thing that's notable is that equity has been a challenge, and I want to speak specifically to the fund itself for as far as what is, and also its administration, and just in general. I was just reading through some of the budgets, a couple of years of budgets, looking for line items, and thankfully Pepper was able to point me in the right direction, and I'm going to, as best as I can articulate it, state what I think I saw, and that is that there was 30% of the excise taxes that were deferred for prevention, and then recently, I think it was on page 99 of last year's budget, or maybe it was section E 120 the year before, in conjunction. Collectively, what's being called for is no further allocation of excise taxes, and they would revert back to the general fund, and that would be dumped, I think, at the end of July, if I'm not mistaken, each year. And I think the estimated excise tax for this last year was 10 million, and I think there was 3 million that was projected to go into prevention, which meant the other 7 would have went back in. And I do realize that I'm in the agriculture committee and not the appropriations committee. But I also realize that there are some collaborative and powerful senators sitting around the table right now, and that you do have the authority to send a note down to approps, or to collaborate with them in the hallway as need be. This is what I found. Number one, I think ACCD is administering this fund that was allocated to equity in this work, and I would just flag the fact that everything that the Cannabis Control Board has communicated from day one to current day, and everything that they've represented has just cried the whole, I think, the narrative, the constant narrative of equity. So I just want to be consistent to the work that we said that we are doing. Back to the observations, however, what I see is that it seems as though that the ACCD in the administration of these funds is probably not the appropriate agency to administer. I haven't gotten any indication that they seem overly excited about doing so, and quite frankly, over the first year of activity, they've respectfully, haven't been incredibly productive either. So I think that that's evidenced by the manner in which these funds, and I will note that the fund itself was insufficient and non-sustainable, this equity fund, because I think it was to the tune of maybe a couple, $250,000 off the top, and maybe another $500,000 off of appropriations. And that's it. And there was no sustainability that was built into it. The reason why I mentioned the excise fund initially is because the money's there. The money is, we have a source of this to be able to fund the work. And I think the last thing I'll say is, and I just open myself up to your questions or comments, but last thing I'll say is that I believe that, in this R113, this joint resolution that you signed in 2021 that declared that racism is a public health emergency, and that you do everything you could do to address systemic racism, legacy of slavery. I think this is an opportunity, because I think equity in this industry goes far beyond expunging folks' records or even giving them an opportunity to start a business, but it goes towards placing the requisite resources towards marginalized communities to ensure that they have the appropriate programs and services so everybody has everything that they need. And so it was a proposal that we put forward early in the game. It's been kind of moved off to the side up until now. The main reason why you're hearing about this, frankly, is that we wanted to do this as a coalition. And this is our first opportunity to appear before any committee as a coalition. So we do appreciate that. We appreciate you giving us the time. I know it's a really busy, I call this the end of the third quarter legislatively. We totally appreciate and realize where y'all are as far as all of the things that you got to get done, which is why we respect the fact that you've given us the time, that you've given us to come in and testify before you as the coalition, as the Cannabis Equity Coalition. Again, I thank you for your time, and also if you'd see it fit, if you could put a word in for some of these 7 points that we've put before you, particularly on the area of equity, it would, we'd really appreciate it if you could put a word in for us over appropriations. I didn't come with any language today, but I certainly would be willing to take any of that or all of that offline, and if there's any way in which you deem it appropriate, or if you think it'd be better for us to go in the front door of another committee and you want to facilitate that, to be able to move us to a place where we're making more progress in these areas, where we're seeing more access to land beyond 0.2%, where there's sufficient sustainable funding for an equity initiative, where we're looking beyond what we're currently doing, and we're looking into communities and funding communities with the appropriate programs and services to meet everybody's needs. If there's any way that you can assist us in those areas, we certainly would appreciate it. Thank you for your time. I'm open to your questions.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. There are questions from the committee at this point. There are no questions right now, but hang with us and we may have some as we move forward. So thank you. And
appreciate the time, Senator. Have a great day.
So Jeffrey, is there who's? Yeah, next.
Morning, committee. Morning, Mark. For the record, Jeff Stella, co-founder, executive director of Vermont Growers Association. Very proud to be part of this coalition, along with Rural Vermont, Northern Vermont, the Green Mountain Patients Alliance, another new nonprofit that specializes in medical cannabis, which should not be excluded from any cannabis-related conversation in the State House, as far as we're concerned. Very special constituency here in Vermont, medical patients and caregivers. In addition to In addition to being part of the coalition, we are, Vermont Growers Association is part of a national coalition as well, the National Craft Cannabis Coalition, bringing Vermont's small farmers and producers' interests to Washington DC, and that sort of large cannabis conversation that's happening in Washington DC. Albeit not much movement, it's important for our interests and our market to have a voice in that conversation.
Not any movement down there.
You know, there's some major pieces of legislation, but things are so gridlocked. The focus really is on, I want to say, rescheduling at this point in time. That also is hitting a little bit of some speed bumps between the FDA, the DEA, HHS, and whatnot. So things will take time, a lot longer than we anticipated.
You ever consider donating some cannabis to those folks to try to get them off the dime?
I will pass along that suggestion, Chair. So thank you for it.
I'd be interested in that. Myself.
So I, like my colleague Graham, will be brief. We want to provide time for witnesses to share their experiences with this emerging marketplace. Very briefly about VGA, we formed in 2019. We are a 501c4 member-based nonprofit, though we have growers in our name. We are very proud that our dues-paying members represent the entire supply chain. So you'll hear from retailers later, and we also have wholesalers, product manufacturers, in addition to growers and ancillary businesses. So really the full gamut, and we're very proud of serving that community. It's a small state, it's a small community with diverse voices, but we've got lots of shared interests. So I would like to provide, in my brief time here, a little bit of maybe some table setting and prep the witnesses that are coming after me, and give you guys a little bit of an update on where the market is from our perspective. So the adult use market in Vermont is coming up on its third year. It's currently in its second year, but the third year mark. It is a bittersweet moment right now. It is successful financially. Sometime last year in the spring, I believe April or May, the cannabis excise tax surpassed the 14%, surpassed the alcohol excise tax of 10%. So we think that's a significant component of this narrative. We feel that we're a significant contributor to the state economy, and these numbers are starting to play out. So we want to do what we can to protect the progress, the moments of progress, and the successful aspects of this market. That being said, bittersweet because we are beginning to face some of the compounding issues that we see from market structure and from other sort of laws and regulations that we believe require some examination and some reformation. So some of those issues are around product saturation, the inability for the general public to access products from producers at retailers. That is a contributing factor to what we're seeing right now, which is a little bit of a buildup, albeit seasonally for product. Another component of that issue.
So you're proposing to sell direct?
That would absolutely be an alleviating solution that we feel should be considered this year. We are hearing from not just growers, but small product manufacturers as well, that is essential, not just to their own leverage and valuing their own product, but really at tackling what we feel is a more of a holistic market structure, which is enabling greater points of access for the general public that will enable product to flow better and not sort of get built up. Also keep in mind, Chair and committee members, that Vermont is a retail opt-in state. So that in and of itself will create a patchwork of localities that can sell to the general public and those who cannot. That is generally seen as a contributor to these sorts of issues that we're beginning to experience.
I don't see how that could possibly work.
What's that?
Selling direct to a customer, because how would you, I mean, beer and wine, it's a controlled product. They can't sell direct to individuals. They usually go through some kind of a broker like Baker Brothers or Farrell's or somebody. And how how would you keep track of what you owe and who you owe it to? And I mean, if you had every Tom, Dick and Harry walking into, say, Johnny Rogers' place and being able to buy direct from him. I don't know how that would work.
Good question. And sticking with the beer analogy for a moment, I'm thinking of Hill Farmstead, Foam Brewery, some of the reputable brands that I think Vermont is proud of. They produce a really good product. Those breweries absolutely have mandated distribution, but they're also able, right, to offer a safe, responsible place for Vermonters, for those who are visiting our state, to visit these destinations and really interface directly with the producers. Maybe sample some of the beer, again, in a responsible, fair manner. And we think that, there are other analogies down the line as well with raw milk, but we do believe that the CCB to date has done a pretty good job in standing up rules. But they have, for instance, some fantastic rules around delivery right now, which we think would be applicable to this conversation. I mean, think about a small producer that is maybe able to, in a very responsible manner, just deliver to, forests in a ski resort in the winter months, which would really materially address this ebb and flow of product saturation that we're dealing with. If there is a greater capacity to move that product into the hands of the general public. So we do believe, and we have confidence in the CCB working with the industry to develop rules around direct to consumer. I'll also say that it's not a silver bullet, and I don't want to linger on this issue. I do want to provide some time for licensees to speak directly to why it's important to them. But I just want to share, it is by no means a silver bullet. For instance, we do expect producers to diversify their portfolio with direct to consumer. They'll still use wholesalers. They'll still go to retail shops. It's just more of a complete and holistic, and these are reciprocating policy matters as well. Retailers, we're hearing, favor this because it provides some more synergy. They can send tourists to the producer site within reason to meet them and then maybe purchase some more product if need be.
So I'm hearing that your concern, one of the concerns, is lack of access.
Yes,
How many retail stores do we have in the state?
right now there are 73. And again, keep in mind we're retail opted, so that's not every locality. There's some like Stowe, no stores whatsoever.
So I'm from Rutland, I think there's 3 or 4 there.
Burlington like 12.
So I guess I'm still not understanding how people can't access it.
Well, if you have to travel to get to it, that kind of thing, that is relevant. We do have some. I think the CCB did a really good job of issuing retailer licenses in a distributive manner throughout the state, but they're limited by statute, for instance, right? They can't license a retailer in an area where the town didn't opt in, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that is material to this conversation.
Okay. Thank you.
And we're asking that our direct to consumer language not necessarily be beholden to retail opt-in. We feel that should be part of the conversation to make sure that small producers have access and really, build relationships with the general public. This is no different than milk. We have dairy farmers to some extent that are able to sell directly from their farm stand, but they also supply milk to the grocery store and they sell in both places. It's just a healthy component. And I want to stress, following my colleague Mark Hughes, the policy that comes out of our coalition strikes at the heart of the enabling statute, Act 164/2020, with regards to equity. There is overlap between our policies dismantling systemic racism, building equity in the market, and also doing what's best for small producers and small farmers. There's overlap there. All of our policies strike at the heart of that, whether it's consumption, public consumption over like commodifying consumption and allowing small restricted areas. That also speaks to a greater flow of product. It also speaks to the capacity for a Vermont resident to safely enjoy cannabis in their house. And we also have home grow allowances of 2 mature plants. So we really have overarching policy. When you guys explore our 7 points this year, please keep that in mind. And so, that being said, I'd like to maybe conclude my statements there, and allow time for the licensees. You'll be hearing from cultivators, retailers, and we think it's important that you guys get their sentiments. Thank you.
Yeah, questions from the committee? I don't know if this question should go to you or be directed to you, but how are we doing? Or how are you folks doing dealing with the black market people? Is that getting better or worse or?
Certainly. I mean, if I may respond, I'm gonna provide opportunity for other witnesses. You know, two things. At the national level, in our national coalition, we work closely, the NCCC, we work closely with CANRA. CANRA is the Cannabis Regulators Association. Vermont's agency, the CCB, is a member of CANRA. CANRA shares with us, which is the shared, basically the shared perspective of regulators, including here in Vermont, that the largest and most material threat, besides like foreign policy, to adult use licensees is not anymore the legacy market, Chair, which we prefer the legacy market as opposed to black market. It is things like synthetic compounds and translating CBD into so these overly processed cannabinoids, these products that are, for instance, right now regularly available in Vermont. That is more of a material threat to licensees and their capacity to sell product in their regulated space. So we welcome that conversation. If you guys want to have it, there is language in H612, which a colleague of mine spoke to, that we oppose, and we have to get into that another time. But it speaks to this issue, which is a greater threat than the legacy market, which is these sort of designer cannabinoids. And we need to put a stop to that. So that's what I'll say there.
Yeah.
And I look forward to witnesses.
Anything else? No, that's, thank you.
Thanks so much for your time.
So, Mariah, is it? Who's up?
What do you have on the, I did not look at the list in front of you. You will have a line.
Yeah, Myra have this.
Myra's on remote. I believe she is in the waiting room probably.
Oh, there you are. Yeah, you've been waiting a long time. Seems like I saw you a long time ago on there.
I was
What-
here a little bit ago. It's okay. I don't mind waiting. I appreciate the opportunity to be heard today. This is my first time giving testimony, so I did prepare a written statement. I'm not as good at speaking off the cuff as my predecessors are, so I will go ahead and get started. My name is Myra Adams, and I'm a licensed Tier 1 outdoor cannabis cultivator operating under the name of Hidden Leaf Homestead. Without going into too much detail, I will give you a little background on how I came to be here. My husband is a disabled veteran, and he was in desperate need of better VA medical care than the state we were living in could provide. Cannabis was illegal there, and being a former corrections specialist for the Marine Corps Military Police, he was incredibly conflicted. He felt he was a criminal buying cannabis on the black market and relying on its benefits just to get through each day. After a lot of research and recommendations, we chose to move to Vermont in 2019. Although the cost of living was much higher here, the sacrifice seemed worth it to obtain what we felt was the freedom in a state that put its people first and made laws based on common sense rather than idealistic beliefs. Although recreational cannabis had not been legalized yet, it didn't carry the same stigma in Vermont. And word was the cannabis law was continuing to change for the better. A medical cannabis card was not a viable option for him due to the negative consequences that come with being a registered medical cannabis patient. I was already working on establishing a private garden, and we decided to also grow our own cannabis plants. We added chickens to the mix, and our little homestead adventure began. When recreational grow licenses were made available to apply for in 2022, I was excited about the opportunity and immediately started working on my application. Vermont's focus was to support small growers, and I felt like I fit perfectly into that category. The money I can make from cannabis sales could help expand the number of fruits and vegetables I wanted to be able to grow and potentially offer to our community. I also thought I would then, with a license, be able to grow enough to keep my husband supplied without having to buy more because his consumption far outpaced what we could personally and legally produce with such a short outdoor season. We did not have the space to grow indoors, nor the funds to increase our electric bill. Little did I know the entire process was not going to be as easy as it seemed to be on the surface, nor would it be as affordable as I thought. At every turn, there was roadblock after roadblock. For the sake of time, I won't go into all of them. The issue I would like to focus on, and the point of me speaking with you today, is to bring attention to the conflicts between Vermont cannabis law and agricultural law. After receiving my license, I began the work to clear what little usable land area we have for farming. Our lot size is an acre, but the only suitable place for growing crops in an area is an area of roughly 3,000 square feet. With a Tier 1 license, I can use 1,000 square feet for cannabis and the rest for other food-bearing plants and trees. I obtained a loan through VSECU to purchase a greenhouse. Our property had severe drainage issues that impacted much of our land, even up to the foundation of our house. We needed to bring in an excavation crew for a drainage solution and to create a level area for our 720 square foot greenhouse. I received permission from the town to proceed and no permits were required. In October of 2022, one of our neighbors complained to the town that we were interfering with wetlands. The town zoning admin emailed me an informational brochure about wetlands and told me whom to contact with the state. Although our property was not listed on government wetlands maps, I wanted to make sure that we were not violating any laws. I wanted to do things correctly, but I was also fearful of the astronomical fines if there was a reason we were found to be in violation. Work had already started when I heard from the state wetlands ecologist. She wanted to do a site visit, came out in November of 2022. I explained that a town road culvert that drains onto our property is completely rusted out. You could actually see where water was seeping into the ground and draining across the property rather than being diverted into the stream. The stream for the diverted water was also quite shallow and could not contain all of the water when it rained heavily. The drainage issues we were having near to our house was from a new deep well drilled, which required the extension of our driveway and changed the path of water runoff. All the sediment and clay drilled out was left behind, causing water to settle rather than drain. The trifecta was the cattails, which didn't appear until after we had sand brought in for a small pool pad. The standing water and presence of cattails screamed wetlands, but I knew it was not because I had seen the changes to the land occur over a very short period of time, with pictures of the area before and after each project took place. The fact that trees and stumps had been cleared before her arrival didn't help much because it made the ground muddy with puddles of standing water. I thought with the pictures and explanation for the plants and hydrology present that there wouldn't be any concern. I was wrong. The state wetlands ecologist declared most of our property to be a Class 2 wetlands and a small area behind our house that we knew was wetland because it was very obvious as a Class 1. She said that we would need to hire a wetlands engineer to complete a delineation and assist with the complicated permitting process. We were told that all work needed to cease until a permit was granted, which wouldn't be possible to obtain until the end of the following year. The delineation would not be done until spring. My plans came to a grinding halt, and all the money I had spent so far was for nothing. The greenhouse I was making payments on, still packed up in boxes on pallets in our driveway, would remain there for at least another year. In January of 2023, I reached out to Otter Creek Engineering, and one of their engineers was scheduled to visit our site in May. I sent all of the information I had, provided the state ecologist as well as the state findings. Between the delineation and permitting application, the estimate was around $6,000. $6,000 so that I could farm less than 3,000 square feet of my own property. Property I had to already pay taxes on, and I held a license that had so far cost me $2,100 between the application fee, the licensing fee, the local town fee, and the background check fee. Plus $3,000 I had purchased for the product liability insurance with no chance of having any product to sell for at least another year. That's over $11,000 and doesn't include the cost of the greenhouse. I received no government assistance to purchase or any of the excavation work, nor the actual cost of farming. I was already in deep with nothing to show for it, which ended up costing me my mental health, which manifested into physical health problems, resulting in a visit to the ER, and in turn causing a significant strain on my marriage. In May, the engineer arrived, and shortly after she exited her vehicle and took a glance over the property, she said that it was a Class 3 wetland at most, which doesn't require a permit, if it was even a wetland at all. But she still needed to complete the delineation, which included soil samples, and then she would know for sure. Afterward, she said that she could not complete the permitting process because the area in question is not a wetland. And then I waited over a month for the state wetlands ecologist and our hired engineer to complete a third site visit together. The final determination that it was not a wetland. However, the state ecologist said that she considered it a developing wetland and would not grant us the normal 5-year determination. She stipulated that we had to have work done by the end of the year. If not, we would have to start the delineation process over again in 2024 and lose another year.
Yeah.
I can't begin to explain how much relief, anger, and urgency I felt all at the same time. I had to come up with a lot of money in a very short period of time and find an available excavation crew that wasn't already booked for the remainder of the year that could get the work done before the snow started falling and the ground froze. My husband did not want to contribute any of his money for anything remotely related to Hidden Leaf Homestead in fear of losing his VA benefits. We've seen in the news what happens to families and farms receiving federal benefits when they get a license to grow cannabis. It's no secret that a large percentage of veterans consume cannabis, but I've kept my husband as far removed as possible from the business of production as a precautionary measure. I didn't sit idly hoping Plan A would work out. I was frantically searching for a Plan B because nothing was going as I expected. I was talking to anyone who would listen, trying to figure out what to do if I couldn't get the work done in time. It was suggested that if I had a farm determination letter from the Vermont Department of Agriculture, then the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation would not be able to prevent me from continuing as planned. But when I tried to get the farm determination letter, I did not meet the minimum farm size requirements or the generated income requirement that would exempt me from the farm size requirement. But I couldn't generate the agriculture income without access to the farmland in the first place. I was stuck in an awful catch-22. It was recommended that I reach out to the CCB for assistance, and they said that my license should serve in place of the farm determination letter. However, the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation said that they would not accept my license as a farm determination because they follow the federal guidelines for agricultural, which excludes cannabis. Plan A, thankfully, managed to work out, but I still need to achieve a successful grow season. I will have been licensed for 2 years and haven't sold a speck of cannabis flower. 2 years, and I'll be late to the game in a market that is already becoming oversaturated. no time to build my brand alongside everyone else. I have no time to make mistakes and work out the kinks. I've got to get it right and do it very well the first time to be successful and make this struggle worth it. I feel what I went through was completely unnecessary and, to be honest, a bit cruel. I don't want anyone else to have to go through this. I ask that you please do what you can to recognize cannabis growers as farmers and commit to fairness across all state agencies. Don't just use meaningful words and phrases such as social equity and economic empowerment. Show us what they mean. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad I wasn't on that ride with you. That's simple. So how large is your plot of land that you have?
I have a total of 1 acre, but only about 3,000 square feet is farmable area. Most of our property is either on a slope or has a stream running through it. And we do have a small section of class 2 wetland, but the area that we're farming isn't anywhere near it.
But you had to jump through all those unnecessary hoops to get it cleared up?
That's correct.
And was it the state that caused that or the municipality?
The state.
Doing well. So did you succeed in getting your greenhouse up?
We got all the excavation work done and the drainage work. It got too cold for us to get our greenhouse up. We've got some of the skeleton up right now. We have to wait until April before we can complete that and do some electrical work. But the plan is that if all that gets done, we should be able to start in May.
So you've never grown a thing? You haven't grown one plant?
Only personal grow. We haven't, the first year that we tried to grow, we grew about 45 plants. That's about all we could hide behind our house from the road because most of our property is viewable from a public road. So we need the greenhouse in order to hide the plants. And we started so late in the season, our first year, that we really couldn't sell anything that we have grown. So the only thing that I was able to sell last year was seedlings. We did grow some seedlings and sold those to one of the licensed retailers for sale, but it was pennies. I think that sale was about $725. And as of right now, I'm about $75,000 in the hole.
That's not a good question from community members. No? Graham?
Graham Meaning, Circuit for Oldemont. I just wanted to maybe clarify for the committee members. Last year we spent time in here sort of enumerating in legislation aspects of agricultural status to provide to outdoor producers. So I think just to be absolutely clear, like what we're asking here is that the aspects of agricultural status related to wetlands are included in legislation as well. They're not currently enumerated. So what, as Myra said, what she ran into, she wouldn't have run into if she was considered a farmer given that aspect of agricultural status.
Well, that's why I asked how big a plot of land did she have to start with? And was it zoned ag or was it residential? How is your property zoned?
Our town is currently in the process of rezoning, and I'm not sure if it's been completed or not, but we're considered rural.
Yes, so farming is a allowable use in a rural district usually.
Yes.
And how, did you tell us how many acres are footage, what your footage of your property is, or?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
how large a plot of land do you have with your, because you're right near your house. So how big is that plot of land?
Our entire property is 1 acre. But the area that we are farming and the area that was in question is less than 3,000 square feet.
So to start with, then you had 1 acre. You had 1 acre of land. Part of it's in a wetlands. Part of it is, there's a brook going through.
Mhm.
Part of it your house is on.
Mhm.
Is there a front lawn or driveway?
Not much. Our house is pretty much right on the road.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Well, you're better off than the guy we talked with yesterday that's trying to farm on a half an acre.
Mhm.
In that,
In a residential neighborhood.
in a residential neighborhood, so. So you're all set to go though now, but you went through a lot to get to where you are and a lot of money short.
Yes.
Well,
And Chair, can I just, would you remind me, what town are you in?
South Londonderry.
South Londonderry, okay. Thank
yeah,
you.
that's a small rule.
Yeah, yeah.
Graham, you had a question?
Yeah, I just want, Graham Unix from Knockville, Vermont. I just wanted to just contextualize this again, like you fall under as a farm, regardless of the size of the plot of land you're working on, you fall under the RIPs if you make more than $2,000 of gross income from your farm every year.
Right.
So that's one factor. It's not just about land size. Two, tier 1 cultivators have 1,000 square feet of cultivation space for 125 plants. So 3,000 square feet may not sound like much, but within the tier of her license, it's more than enough. And in fact, it's if she chose to go by the 1,000 square foot dimensions as she mentioned, she would be limited to only 1/3 of that space for the cannabis. So I just want to say that it's appropriate. It's an appropriate amount of space, even if that were zoned residential. The town, if it were given agricultural status as farms are, the town's zoning wouldn't, as we saw with Jason's situation yesterday, the RAPs take priority over town zoning. But I just wanted to contextualize that a little bit more.
And
So-
if I could add to Graham's statement, the remaining 2,000 square feet, we do plan to farm agricultural goods, fruits and vegetables. And thankfully, the town of South Londonderry has been very supportive of what I'm trying to do. And but their hands are tied when it comes to state laws and regulation.
What, did you have a neighbor complain about what you were doing? Is that where you went?
We we have a neighbor that is one of those neighbors that just isn't, they're not happy people. So they just like to be in everybody else's business and try to make life as difficult as possible. But aside from them, the rest of my neighbors and people in the area and the community have been incredibly supportive. And actually, financially, I would have already been finished if it wasn't for one of my neighbors stepping up and providing a loan so that we could have the excavation work done.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. Well, but you're all set to plant this spring.
Yep. So far, so good, unless somebody else comes to me and says, hold up, you have to stop for this reason, which has happened many times before. I didn't go into every detail. It would be quite a very long story, but I just kind of wanted to focus on the agricultural piece today.
Well, sorry for all your troubles, but thank you, a lot for participating today. We need to hear stories like what you just told.
Yeah.
Not that we can fix them, but we can rattle the cage and try.
Yes, my goal of being here today is to hopefully prevent anyone from having to go through this in the future.
Wasn't even pleasant listening to it. So, thanks again, Myra.
Thank you so
Um,
much.
So we got Ben. Ben, up.
Yeah. How's it going? I'm Ben.
Yep. Morning and welcome.
Thank you. Ben Wilcox. I'm coming here from Sutton, which is in Caledonia County, and I operate Off-Piste Farm, which is a licensed tier 1 outdoor cultivation business. I was issued the license in July of 2022. I applied as soon as I could, and I think that was pretty early on as one of the earlier licensed cultivators. So I've had 2 growing seasons now, I guess, under my license. And the tier 1 outdoor cultivator, as people have said, I'm allowed to grow 125 plants outside under the sun. I don't do anything indoor. My property's off the grid, so I just kind of try to use Mother Nature as much as possible. And the tiers don't get any smaller than me. I'm the smallest license type. So I would like to bring up a couple of things that I was reading through what I think was the proposed bill. And there's a change in there to allow ag exemptions for fire codes for outdoor cultivators. Because they currently exist for ag businesses, barns and whatnot. If you have fewer than 10 employees, you don't have to have your building meet fire safety codes. But that doesn't, I guess it's not explicitly stated for cannabis cultivators. And as a tier 1 grower, generally speaking, I can do most of the work throughout the summer myself, tending my crop. But then there's a fairly intensive time period in the fall during the harvest where, hopefully if I've had a good summer, I have lots of harvest. And it's time sensitive that, I'm outside and I'm done butter and stuff, and I got to get those plants in. What I typically do is I built years ago, when I was growing for hemp, CB, I built a giant shed that's extremely basic, and built solely for drying my cannabis. And I had every intention of only using it for that. And I was trying to build it as cheap as possible because there wasn't a lot of money in the CBD that I was growing. So I was kind of forced to. And I've transitioned that into my THC license, and I still use the same shed. However, so in the fall, when I need extra people to help to be in compliance with fire safety law, I'm a home-based business. I'm not allowed to have more than one person enter that building, myself or one other person. Otherwise, I'd be out of compliance with fire marshal law. So it'd be nice if we could fall under the same exemptions for other ag businesses and have up to 10. But generally I might have like 2 or 3 people. Oftentimes it's like my sister, my mom, a good friend, those types of folks helping me on weekends.
So you can't even have your family in there?
Not legally, as far as I understand it. And from what I read in the proposed bill seems to fix that. So I think that would be beneficial to me and also the people that I oftentimes hire to help with that type of thing. Sometimes they generally already have a full-time job and they come over afterwards or on weekends, and it's a little extra money for them that time of year, which most people I think appreciate. So it can helps the community, I think, in that way. We're talking about the economy and stuff, so that's just one small, in Sutton, there's more cows than people, it's not like there are tons of jobs around, so, a lot of people do rely on multiple sources of income. I think that's common.
More cows on one farm than.
Exactly. So, anyways, so that's one thing, and then the other, thing that I would like to speak to, and I'm just one licensee, but I think I could probably speak to the larger population of licensees at large. I think we share a lot of similar concerns and whatnot. is the direct to consumer thing. So right now, as a cultivator, and I grow plants, and I keep plants year round. I overwinter plants. I produce my own seed, my own clones. I don't buy anything from anybody else. And I plant those plants in the ground, in my field, on my property, grow them to maturity, harvest, dry, sell the flower. I have one harvest a year. I tell people I'm paycheck to paycheck, but my paychecks come once a year kind of thing, you know what I mean? So I'm harvest to harvest and trying to just sell enough to get through another year. And right now I'm forced to wholesale on my crop. The closest I can get to the consumer is to sell directly to a retail shop that can then sell to the consumer. And I'm fortunate that I have a good working relationship with a lot of great retailers around the state. And the flower has been moving, and it's been working for me so far. But what I have been seeing lately is increased competition at the wholesale level. Because everybody's forced to go into the, you know, retailers or manufacturers. And I'll also share that, I went to college at UVM between the years of 2004 and 2008. And I don't know how I know this, but I remember I heard, caught wind that the retail price of cannabis back then on the black market was between $35 and $50 for an 1/8 ounce, which is kind of that's how it's typically sold, dried flowered by the 1/8 ounce. It was $35 to $50 back then, about 15 to 20 years ago. It's still that same price now. So my point is that consumers are willing to pay a good price for it. The price for the consumer hasn't dropped at all. So the bartering and competition and kind of what I say like dickering is at the wholesale level. Everybody trying to sell to the retailers. Retailers can continue to sell at 35 to 50 and 8. People will pay that all they want, consumers. But if the wholesalers are starting to compete with each other and try to go lower and lower, it just basically gives a larger percentage to the retailer of the ultimate price. I always think the ultimate price of the cannabis as if it's sold by the 1/8 ounce, a pound. I mean, I sell pounds, but I think of it as like the ultimate retail value of that pound is $4,800. How much of that retail value can I get as a grower? Right now, the best I can possibly do is 50%. So as a wholesale.
You're doing a lot better than the milk guys.
Well, that might be true, and maybe the milk guys should get a license to grow cannabis, you know? There's opportunity there too for them as well, and, however, so, and being in Sutton too, like, I would never expect to sell the majority by anywhere close of my crop to consumers directly. I mean, I'm always gonna use wholesalers, retailers to move 95% of my harvest, but that 5%, if I could theoretically sell 5% at the full retail price, that would have given me so much more income and revenue. And I would expect there to be hoops to go through and increased fees of, licensing, and you gotta check to make sure everybody's 21 and the record keeping, like you said. Right now, I keep very detailed records already of everything. I don't see it as an additional major hurdle to keep track of the,
Which goes to retail.
where it goes to,
which
yeah, you
goes
take a
to-
picture of their driver's license, all those types of things that retailers do. They do that already.
Yeah.
I would expect to have to do the same thing.
And what's a retail? Is there a small retail license and a large retail
far as
license?
I know,
Or is it
there's-
just one?
There's just one retail license type. And,
Expensive.
I think it is. I don't know a lot about it. It's not my license type, but I do know that I couldn't really make it work on my own without a large investment. I couldn't in theory build a building and go through all of that to do it, but my property is, in rural Sutton with no power, so it would be an expensive, but if I could do like by appointment to friends and neighbors, or one thing I've done is I offer campsite rentals nightly to folks. I'm close to the Kingdom Trails mountain biking.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of visitors to the area in the summertime, and I offer, I have 2 sites that I rent for $20 a night. People can come pitch their tent and stay there. And it's been doing pretty well. And people ask me all the time, hey, can I get a joint from you? Like, they see the plants growing, they're like, whoa, what's, because they don't really know until they come, then they see it and they kind of learn, they're like, and I tell them no, of course. And I point them to the nearest retailer, which is in St. Johnsbury, 20 minutes away. And I have had people leave and go there to get it. But when they're at my farm, they go there to buy my flower in St. Johnsbury to bring it back to my farm when they're already at my farm, you know what I mean? So.
I wonder, I wonder if a regulator came and saw them, interviewed them, those folks, they see the smoke or whatever. And or somebody calls on their cell phone because everybody calls it. And they say the regulator comes and catches them smoking, but yeah, you're growing it on the same property, I would presume. Is there a way to protect you from, even though they brought it onto the property?
A regulator certainly could come, and I anticipate that situation happening at any given moment. I do get inspected by the Cannabis Control Board. I have a compliance officer who's come twice. They know I offer tent site rentals. I also offer tours of my property. And I just, I don't sell to them. I'm very explicit with that. I absolutely do not. They, hopefully they'd have a receipt to show they bought it at the Green Man in St. Johnsbury. I mean, I don't want to jeopardize my license or my business by any means. I put a chicken fence up around my plants, so I only have 125 plants. It's not, doesn't take up, my property is much larger than what I need, so I put a little chicken fence around it and I put signage up that you cannot, that's my license area. My entire property isn't my license area, if that makes sense.
Just that.
Like my home and
So many square feet, isn't it?
it's, well, I opted to go, you can do 1,000 square feet or 125 plants if you're growing outside. So I opted for the plant count, which allows me to spread them out into a larger area. I use about a quarter of an acre to cultivate in total. But my property is 50 acres total. So I still want to be able to invite my friends and family over for a barbecue on a Saturday and not have to have them get a Cannabis Control Board license and whatnot. So I designate like my drying shed is my license area where you can't enter unless you have a card. And inside that chicken fence where my plants are is a licensed area. And I try to designate the spots on my property and I have an aerial view map, that is submitted with my license application to show where those things are. And the Cannabis Control Board compliance officer has come and I've gone over this with her. I gave her a full tour. She asked me, they were very concerned about the tours and in doing that type of thing. There's not many people in the state doing that right now, as far as I know. My friend Eli, who was in here, is doing it as well, but those are my attempts to try to bring myself closer to the consumer as much as I legally can. So even the tour guests, they come, they ask for a joint, I always refuse and tell them to go to the Green Man in St. Johnsbury after the tour.
That'd be a long ride on a bicycle.
It would be, so, yeah, they typically everyone's in their vehicle,
So they have a car plus a bike.
Oh, yeah, they bring their bikes on the car, yeah, the mountain bikers, oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. They're not biking to my place, no, I'm too far, they drive in. Anyways.
So what you're advocating for is a small growers retail license.
That'll be, yeah, I think helpful to avoid the competition at the wholesale level and provide opportunity for small businesses to try to capture more of the retail value of their products, that they're growing. I mean,
Yeah, why don't you go wholesale?
and also to that give the outdoor growers the same ag exemption for public fire codes for their buildings as other farms have, up to 10 codes.
Right?
So I'm just curious, what would if we could break the retail licenses down, what sort of parameters would you put on it? And have you talked to anybody from the CCB yet about it?
I've mentioned it with my compliance officer during her site visits. The CCB is very busy, regularly in the industry. It's hard to have a personal conversation really with anyone that's there, but I haven't talked with them about it, but I guess, yeah, that's it. Those are the difficult, things, how do you do it? And I guess I would expect to have some fees and you have to have a way to check to make sure the folks are over 21. I think would be, that's the main sticking point of the retail. Like when you go to buy a flower at a retail store, they check your ID twice. When you enter the door, like if we were a retail and you were the cash register, there'd be somebody outside the door checking my license to even enter the building. And then when you pick out what you want at the cash register, they check it again.
Yeah.
As if your ID could change somehow. one spot the other, but it's just a redundant, it's an extra, just double check to make sure, that they're over 21. I think-
Well, we get pretty good reports on the way the CCB is set up and running.
Yeah,
And of course, it's all new, within a couple of years, so there's bumps along the way
Sure.
that, you have to work hell in any business.
yeah.
And so, yes,
If I may, for the record, Jeff Vizitello, Vermont Growers Association. Brian, I appreciate that question, and I would urge the committee to refer to S-127. We think that's a good place to start this conversation. In S-127, we propose adding allowances to the current licenses as is, and allow them to do on-site and delivery. With the CCB to develop rules and regulations around that. We think they did a really good job. And I'll just add that, this is just a component to our larger priorities, but we think that is the best way to approach this, as opposed to, for instance, there's proposals out there to lead direct sales with like retailers and whatnot. We think that, it is costly to get into this market as is. So let's make it as accessible as possible for these small producers to arrive at that leverage. So 127 has some proposed language. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, thank you for.
yeah, thanks for
having me.
Greg, John? Oh, good morning.
Good morning, all.
Can I make an adjournment motion?
Yeah. Good to see all my friends and Senator Campion too.
Really keep them for that.
The kingdom. Linda, did you pass out to the?
No, I put it on their webpage.
Oh, you did? Okay, thank you. Sure you'll find it interesting in reading, and some of you will remember my cannabis lesson on the floor of the Senate from years ago. But just to start out, before the 1937 Marijuana Tax Act passed in Congress, cannabis was poised to become the first $1 billion agricultural crop in the United States. The American Medical Association found out just days before the bill was to be passed and testified it should not be passed, as around 50% of their medicines used cannabinoids in them at that time. It is my hope that we can get rid of the heavy-handed regulation of all types of cannabis and return to the pre-37 era of considering cannabis an agricultural product and the growing of cannabis an agricultural activity. And so I've got a list of a few things, and I know I brought in 20 last time, so I know you guys sometimes lose track before you get all the way down the list, so I only got 7 this time.
We're more apt to get the one.
Okay, we'll start with number 1 then, Senator Starr. Myself and several growers in the state have more than one parcel. So when I started my hemp business, I was at a different property. Then we bought the family farm in 2019, but I've already got a grow room and a greenhouse over there, but they won't let me use it. It's 2 miles down the road because, and I think this came from House Ways and Means, they said that you had to be on one span. And so now I've got to leave all my existing infrastructure that I got a lot of money into empty, and I got to duplicate it. I've talked with both James Pepper and my compliance officer. I showed her the site. She said it would be no problem. She said it would help out several people around the state that are facing the same thing. James, and you would want to ask him to be sure he hasn't changed his mind, but last year he said this was something that he think makes sense, and he would be helpful. He would to get it fixed. This would be just for growers, and I think one of the fears was it applies to all licensees, and they didn't want somebody buying a retail license and then trying to set up satellites or stuff. But most types of farming aren't on one span. Farmers hop all around to get their crops and stuff. And to me, it just seems silly. I've got this greenhouse. I've spent the money, it's got plastic on it, I got the grow room, I got everything there 2 miles down the road on my other property. And I'm not allowed to use it, and I know several other farmers are facing the same thing. One of the things I talked to Senator Starr about is making posting of private property easier. So currently, the class 4 highway that goes through my property, I have hay fields all along. And to legally post it, your posted signs have to be out in the hay field. So every time the farmers crop it, you gotta take down all your posted signs. Every time they spread manure, you gotta take down all your posted signs, take them down and put them back up. It's quite silly. I don't know where that, law actually came from and who pushed it, but it used to be in the old days that if you made it known that your property was private, it was private. And I think we need to return to something like that. We did have an issue this year with 3 college students driving out to the gate of my cannabis field, which is, out, turns up a farm road, right in my farmyard and out through the pasture for over a half a mile. And I caught them before they got out of there. And I bet it's a sight they'll never forget. I didn't have time to put pants or a shirt on. And we held them there till the state cops got there. So it would just
I hope
be,
you got dressed.
I did before the state cops. I did manage to get some pants on. So it'd be great if we could do something about that, so that if we didn't have to take signs down and put them back up.
So were you thinking something like one sign at the beginning on each end saying, next 1 mile or
Yeah, or
so
just,
many tents is posted,
or just visible signs. Maybe they're on the back of the field in some places. Maybe there's places they could be closer to the road, or maybe, there's signs when you pull onto the property. But I just think the restriction of being that certain distance off the road, which puts you right in your valuable cropland, it doesn't.
well, then they have to be every so many feet.
And then every
apart.
so many feet, right, it's really rigid, and it's fine if you have 1 or 2 acres, but I have 379.
See, Fish and Game may be the ones that are regulating that at the present point.
I'm not sure either, but it would certainly help, because we need to have the land posted so that people aren't straying out into the cannabis fields or getting near them. So in the process of making or trimming our flower, we make what is called keef. So keef, it is the THC crystals, the trichomes, breaking off the flower itself. And it kind of, once you get it cleaned, it kind of looks like sand. So I've got a big trimmer. It's got rotating barrels and blades that rotate the opposite way, and it's under vacuum. So it sucks the leaves in, the blades take it off, and it blows it into this big filter bag. And in this filter bag, it separates the green stuff, which is trim, doesn't have a lot of value, and the keef, which is where the cannabinoids are, which is a higher value. It was an oversight in the legislature early on, in the bill that you folks helped me pass last year, made it so I could handle my keef, because I wasn't even supposed to touch it last year, which was an oversight. But now I talked with my compliance officer, and the way that people sell keef is you get these little presses and you press it into what they call a puck. It's like the size of a quarter, but it's 2 or 3 quarters thick, and you sell it a gram per time. And under current law, I can't press my own keef into a puck, which literally they've got several different types, a screw type and a hammer type. And it just seems so ridiculous to me. So one of the things I wish under a grower's license, we would be able to process our own keef.
How do you spell that?
KIEF. Ultimately, I think growers should be able to make their own bubble hash, which basically does the same thing in a different way. It's using ice water and you agitate it and it knocks all the crystals off. They go down into a bag, you filter them out and then dry them. And currently we have to take our stuff to a manufacturer to do that. And then both the keef and the bubble hash can be pressed with a hydraulic press and make what they call live rosin. All three things are super simple with no solvents. And it's just another way for the farmer to be able to value add. So it's basically like me, if I could sell that keef and make live rosin, it'd be like I was making, instead of making milk, I'm making cheese. Because as I told you guys last year, we grow the weed, we dry it, we trim it, we grind it, we put it in a paper, we put that joint in a glass tube, we put a cover on it, and I get $5.85. I bring it to the retailer, he gets $5.85 plus the tax. And so the farmer, just like any other type of farming, we need some more tools to add value to our products. And this is a super simple way to do it. And I didn't write down on my list the bubble hash and the live rosin, but they are just because I don't want to ask for too much at a time. And, you know, the puck is just a no-brainer to be able to take that keef.
How do you sell it at the present?
I have to take it to a manufacturer to do something. And and that's the trouble. I can't find anybody to even do that for me. So I can take it to a manufacturer and have them make live rosin out of it, but then they're taking another chunk out of it before I get to the retailer that then doubles the price. And so it'd be really nice if we could do those three things.
And would they call, and the reason you can, because they call that manufacturer.
Exactly. They call it. Even I asked Chris, I said, well, what if I just put the keef in a little jar and put the cover on? No, I can't even do that with my keef. So I think it's a pretty simple fix that would really help out the growers. Number 4, and this is a discussion that's probably to be had in the tax committees, but outdoor licenses are really unfairly priced. And I think James said that when the CCB was pitching license cost, that they wanted to be much lower than where the legislature settled. And what's happening, so I'm a tier 4 mixed use grower, even though we haven't had enough money to get our indoor grow set up. So we grew 1,250 plants outdoors. And I think my license was $8,500 for my 1,200 plants outdoors, and add on $1,000 for the 1,000 square foot indoors. Now, 1,000 square foot indoors, a good grower can produce as much weed as I can with 1,200 plants outdoors, because he's growing the whole year. They get multiple crops. I got one shot at it outdoors, and my license is 8,500 and theirs is 1,000. And I think we should be encouraging sun-grown wheat instead of growing it under lights. I mean, I know a ton of people grow it under lights, and that's not going to change, but I think we should be not overpricing sun-grown. I think it should be at least competitive or less, because I think we should be encouraging people to grow stuff in soil, in the sun, rather than burning energy to do it. So I'm hoping we can get some fees or license fees changed. This is a real important one to me. We talked a little, and I talked to the House Ag Committee last week, and Ben just mentioned it. So there's a provision in there to allow the use of ag buildings and not have to meet the fire code, which I think is really wonderful. But we need the same exceptions for ag employees. So when my kid comes to town or my sister comes up for the weekend, I can't, if they want to help me, I can't have them help. I think it's absurd that in the outdoor growing, that we have to have them go through background checks and pay the fee to the CCB and get them a card. It's just silly. So we had 1,250 plants, and at the end of the season, when the bud is all ready, you need to take all the big leaves off. While it's growing, the leaves are the solar panels. They're collecting the energy, they're making it grow. When you get ready to take it in, you gotta take all those leaves off. Now, I'm probably the fastest one. And I can do it in 10 minutes when I'm really cranking, 10 minutes per plant. And you can't keep up that pace all day. And so you end up averaging 15, 20 minutes, maybe at the end of the day, it's a half an hour. Well, 1,200 half hours is quite a few hours to pull off in a few weeks. Whereas, you know, with my hemp, I could hire a bunch of people, like Ben said, family and friends who come in the evening, come on the weekends, they put a few hours in and we get it all done together, just like when we used to hay as kids, right? A whole bunch of people came and helped us because there was too much hay for just a few people to get it done. And so if we could get that same ag exemption for employees outdoors, that would be really great.
Ag, so they could work indoors.
Well,
Or can they work indoors?
they can't work anywhere in a production or drying area. And so if they were allowed to work on all components of the harvest, which means they work in the field, work helping you hang it, dry it, and trimming and bucking it and getting it off the stem.
If you ever asked Pepper why it was set up that way?
I'm not sure, and quite frankly, I think when next time he's in, maybe you should ask Pepper. I don't understand what the background checks are for anyway. We've got a licensed grower in Glover that's a registered sex offender, and they gave him a license. So who are we keeping out? Who are we not? And I told you this last year. My background check costs $500, which is ridiculous because
That's what you'd have to do to get the people to help you on the farm.
Those guys, we can do an FBI background check, which is $50, but then we got to pay the CCB $50 and we got to get them a card. So if my kid visits from Virginia for a weekend and wants to help, am I going to go through all that so that he can help for 2 days? It just, to me, it doesn't make any sense. And I don't see the regulatory issue. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. The whole way it's been done. I'd still love to see the CCB create a low-cost add-on license that allows growers to grow cannabis under 1% THC, which is what also is called hemp. So I can't get a USDA license to grow hemp anymore because I grow cannabis and it's federally illegal. I have retailers asking me all the time to provide them with joints that are low THC. Now, if you can take the THC and add CBD and CBG to them, especially for people who need it for medicinal reasons, it is so much more therapeutic. And I'm not allowed to grow those plants now that I have cannabis. And so the compliance officers coming out to my farm to check my plants anyway, they could be separated from the other plants, clearly delineated. They can random test if they want a random test. It seems very, very simple to be able to grow this plant that I think is very valuable to the whole market, the whole consumer market, because there's a lot of people that don't want the really high THC stuff. It's too much for them.
Is there a process where you grow cannabis with hemp, it'll crossbreed or?
No, because we don't let it pollinate. That's the whole key. Cannabis has a male and a female plant. And so if you keep all the males, you have no males, you have all females, it doesn't pollinate because that makes your buds, your flowers less valuable if they do pollinate them. Yeah, and so then the last thing in there, again, this is really sort of the tax policy, but some of the 14% tax generated by the sale of cannabis really should go back to the CCB. Number one, it'll help us compete with the black market. And number two, it'll help alleviate some of the pressure on what I see as very high priced license fees. I don't think there's any other department or agency that's propped up completely on license fees. And I believe it's generating more revenue than anybody thought it was. So it'd be really, really nice. And then it's sort of the same as the family thing. My son took a picture of my granddaughter counting empty bags that we put the cannabis in and put it on Instagram. And Carrie called me up and said, Carrie Gajer,
Yeah.
when he was the head of
Yeah.
compliance, said, we got a complaint from another grower that you got child labor. So I guess what we're supposed to do is send the kids to go watch the TV instead of teaching them. She was counting. She's a 3-year-old kid counting out empty bags. She wanted help. All right. And so exceptions for as in with the employee thing, exceptions for family to be part of the grow operation. It just seems silly. So when I go to the field, the kids want to go with me. I'm not supposed to take them, right? If I'm running out with the 4-wheeler, they're better on a computer screen than they are running around out in the field. I don't think so. It's just another silly thing that, us that grew up in agriculture, it was all about family pulling together.
Yeah.
And then, I'll talk to GovOps about this, but it would be nice in the GovOps bill, they have that exception for farm buildings in the fire code, and it may be a stretch, but it would be nice if the mixed tiers, except for tier 2, would be in there. Because we're hoping to do our indoor in the barn. And I have no idea what hoops they're gonna make us jump through, but converting a barn is a little bit different than moving into a warehouse.
But that barn being with a different span number, you can't use, right?
Well, the other one I can't, but the barn at the farm we use for drying, and that's where we're gonna build our indoor facility. And currently, if I build an indoor facility, then I gotta have the fire guys out there and get approved by them for my barn. But I hope we can move this whole thing towards agriculture, because that's what it's been historically. That's really what it is. We're on the same farm my family's been on since the early 1800s, and we're hoping that this is actually a crop that might end up paying for the farm eventually.
Well, it'd be kind of nice, because
Yeah.
most crops you grow,
Go backwards. I've been there. That's why I'm not milking cows.
Yeah. Well, it was good having your input.
Yes,
Appreciate
thank you all, and if you have any questions, I'm always available as a resource, happy to come down or zoom in or whatever is necessary, but I think it's great that you guys take the time to listen to the folks that are actually on the ground doing the growing.
Yeah, and have you given and talked with Pepper about some of your ideas, or?
I talked with him about the 2 span numbers and he was okay with that. And I checked with my compliance officer and she said no problem and that it would help several other people that are dealing with it. I can't remember if I've talked with him on any of the others, but I left him a message a while ago and he hasn't come back. So we're due a call at some point here.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll see him wandering around the building, but he's probably listening on that thing, so he's hiding from me now.
Well,
Really?
he's been very good about,
He's been great.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think,
And I'll give high praise to my compliance officer. I use her as a resource. She is absolutely delightful.
Yeah,
Yeah, they've all been good to work with. I'm sad that Gary's gone, but
that's, so you're running into, better people than Myra did.
yes, very much so.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, but there is an oversaturation, and I think the CCB is gonna have to consider, I wish they would close the tier 3 indoors. Because the prices that the farmers can get for distillate has dropped more than in half in the last year.
So there's overproduction.
Well, there seems to be, we'll see if there's plenty to go around in July, but right now there's a glut. And the distillate, which is what they make all the edibles and the vape cartridges and that sort of thing with, that's dropped from, it started out around 20,000 when we first opened up. And it's down to about $9,500 a liter now, which is probably a little under $200 a pound.
Yeah.
For your product, so.
Well, good, thank you very much for coming in.
Yeah, well, thank you all for having us.
And
It's good
we'll,
to see y'all. Good to see you.
we'll add
Yep.
pepper in
Was there-
and,
Linda, was one more witness?
I
Was there maybe one more witness waiting for us remotely? Greg?
I didn't.
Greg is here. Is he on this? Greg?
Yeah, Greg's
on.
He only has like a minute or two to speak, if appropriate.
Oh, I thought I asked for Greg and he didn't come on, and so we went to Joe. So Greg is on?
Yes, he is.
Hey guys, I'm here. Do you hear me?
Yeah. Can you put your video on?
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Welcome to my bedroom. Hi guys.
I sure, I guess, or didn't wait long enough in between, before John.
No, you were quick on the draw. It's all good. I get it. Let's get through it. I've only got a couple minutes worth of material. I, like Myra, am not the best public speaker, so I prepared a written statement as well. I'll be happy to share that with you guys after the meeting. Really appreciate you guys taking the time. This is my first time in committee speaking, so thanks for bearing with me. My name is Greg, co-founder and owner-operator of Pine Grove Organics, a cannabis retail shop in Brandon, Vermont. I just want to take a couple minutes to speak on a few topics within VGA and the Vermont Cannabis Equity Coalition priorities that are important to us as a business. As a framing for the committee, I believe all these topics I cover will greatly benefit small farms. First, on the topic of direct-to-consumer sales, we at Pine Grove Organics strongly encourage the committee to consider an allowance for small farms and processors. As you heard from other witnesses, creating a retail-ready product takes a ton of time, effort, and money. With already restrictive packaging and product registration rules, the squeeze of a wholesale model is just too tight for many farmers. The difference in what small farms need to survive and what retailers can pay is growing by the day. Larger indoor grows have put heavy price pressure on the market in the last 6 months. Allowing small farms direct consumer access would not only offer them the option to pursue a way better margin, but it would also provide them more direct feedback about their product and allow them to adjust quickly. On the topic of public consumption, we believe allowing cannabis to be consumed similarly to cigarettes and alcohol will support a more open dialogue about cannabis between all walks of life and protect those who are disproportionately incarcerated for cannabis-related offenses. We also strongly believe it's a key step the state can make to stay competitive in this quickly growing Northeast hub. New York and Canada already allow public consumption. The longer we wait to do the same, the less competitive our businesses will be. Lounges and public events are quickly becoming the most sought after cannabis experiences, both in this state and nationwide. Allowing Ben's visitors to consume cannabis on his site, for example, is a beautiful dream that I think many consumers would be excited to participate in. As the state relies heavily on destination tourism, not being able to compete in that space is a threat to our business. We as retailers serve many customers a day who express their desire for a watering hole for a retail spot or a place to consume in public. Legalizing public consumption is a key step towards creating a safe, healthy, and competitive landscape here in Vermont. Lastly, on the topic of THC caps, we at Pine Grove are firm opponents. As it stands, THC caps have created a really pricey and limited extract market. From a farmer's perspective, the lack of avenue to make affordable high THC concentrate leaves a lot more biomass to move. You're hearing the prices of biomass sent to distillate. That's not uncommon in other markets. So us reaching those kind of prices already is kind of scary. From a retailer's perspective, Vermonters are DIYers and savvy customers. High prices drive them to the illicit market and or to make it themselves. We serve multiple customers who have lost fingers because they believe that extracting cannabis in their homes with butane is a more reasonable choice than spending $60 a gram on hash at a shop. We serve plenty of others who buy bulk concentrate from unregulated sources at a tiny fraction of the current prices, which is often untested and unsafe. The idea that THC caps keep Vermonters more safe is a ridiculous one. The alternative THC caps force Vermonters to seek are way more dangerous. Removal of these caps would enable retailers to keep our customers safe as well. Thanks for taking the time. Always open to questions. Feel free to shoot now or through email.
Yeah.
Well said. Thank you. Good testimony. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Irene? No.
Good.
Thank you.
I just wanted to note that I think what we've heard from certain actors is that retailers are against direct sales. I think one part of our effort here is to bring in a retailer, and we have others who are willing to speak as well, who support direct sales for producers and small manufacturers. See, that's an important part of market equity themselves, for consumers, for those producers, and of supporting, I was spoken to here, like this relationship between producers and the people who are consuming the product.
Might I chime in for a second? Caleb Teskey, journalist in Fine Print. From the consumer perspective, which would be me, I don't have a cannabis license, but it would be great if I could pull up to Ben's farm and just get a joint from him. I would love that as a consumer. I also think it's beneficial for the growers as well, because you get to meet your customers. And for me, I like to meet my grower and I like to know how they're growing their herb. And I think it would be great. And it would also, I think, help keep the prices down for consumers. If, because once it goes to that retail level, they're basically doubling whatever Ben sells it to them for. Usually they're marking it up by double. And if I could just pull up to his farm, I imagine I could get that same product at a cheaper price. So that's something I'd like to see, as well as delivery. I think those two things right there are like common sense reforms that would really help. At least a lot of the growers that I've been interviewing and talking to, they all seem to be behind it. I know some of the retailers aren't, but it was actually nice to hear from a retailer here who's in favor of direct to consumer sales. So I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
That's all I got.